Baseball, the 10th inning, has been all over the PBS airwaves nationally. What compelled you to want to do an update on your original series from the early 90s?
It's interesting. You know, we sort of never ever thought about it for any film, and people would say, why don't you update this or that? But baseball's something different, and when it came out in 1994, we were the only game in town. The strike had devastated baseball, and so we sort of thought, wow, it's a little bit different than the film we finished, and then all the great excitement, the great team play, the Braves pitching, and the Yankees finally being tamed by Joe Torre and that Bronx Zoo, and all this other stuff, and the steroid scandal, and the strike needed explaining. And my beloved Red Sox also happened to get in a world championship there, so it was thrilling to be able to go back and do it.
So many people lived through this. You know, it was the 1990s. You know, everybody witnessed the strike. Is there a challenge to telling a story that people actually lived through? It's a lot different from the Civil War, obviously, when...
You know, telling a good story is always a challenge, and that's all we do. I mean, I can just make the job description, you know, simple. We try to tell a good story. But when we live through it, it's a little bit different than talking about the Civil War or the 1890s in baseball, where it is new to us for the most part. But we lived through the home run chase between McGuire and Sosa, so we're faced with this option. Do you tell it from the perspective of what we know now and drain it of all joy that they were both juiced? Or do you recapitulate and go back and do exactly as we remembered it?
Yeah.
I remember stopping by a bar and just to go inside and say, did he hit one? Mm-hmm. And all that excitement that summer was so great, so we wanted to recreate that, but then also put in the little hints that something was going on that was a little different. So the chapter is called Innocence is Beautiful, which is from Pedro Martinez, the great Boston Red Sox ace, who just says, you know, sometimes not knowing is better. And, I think in retrospect, we're glad we know, but it certainly took away from that.
What sorts of things pique your interest? You know, what does a subject matter need to demonstrate for you to say, you know, this could make a great film?
I'm interested in American history, so it's got to be about us. And then I think it's got to be a good story, or it's got to be a challenge of how you tell a good story. Sometimes you're doing something that's loud, like the Civil War. Sometimes it's intimate, like jazz music. Sometimes it's broadly popular, like baseball. Sometimes it's a religious sect, the Shakers. A lot of them are biographies, from Jack Johnson, the first African-American heavyweight champion, to Thomas Jefferson, the man who made Jack Johnson's life difficult by when he said all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson meant all white men are property free of debt. And he set in motion the greatest country on earth, but it was always going to be struggling with how to deal with the people of different color and not just character.
I know each story is different, but general terms, how long does it take you to go from concept to hitting the airwaves?
You know, we've never tried to manufacture this. There's no template for it, so each film is completely different. It's sort of like your own children, you know. People always say, which is your favorite? And I say, which is your favorite child? And if you answer that, you're not a good parent. You know, the National Parks is 12 hours long, and it took 10 years to make. The Civil War is 11 and a half hours long, and it took 5.5 years to make. You know, it just depends on what it takes to tell the story.
You've had a busy past few years between the war and the national parks, baseball 10th inning. What's next? Folks watching PBS, what can we expect to see the next great thing from Ken Burns?
We have got the next 10 years mapped out. Funding willing. We've got a film coming out on Prohibition next year in 2011. The year after that is on the history of the Dust Bowl. The year after that is the story of the Central Park jogger case and the little-known story of the 5 black and Hispanic boys who went to jail for the crime they didn't commit, as it turns out, after they got out of jail. We're doing a history of the Roosevelts. Theodore, Franklin, and Eleanor. Believe it or not, no one's ever put them all together. That's 2014. 2015, we're doing a biography of Jackie Robinson, the great baseball star. 2016 will be a history of Vietnam, a major series to complement the Civil War and our film on World War II called The War that came out in 2007. And then in 2018, we're doing a history of country music. In 2019, we have what we call a biography to be named later.
Wow.
Yeah.
You hear of 10-year plans, but wow, that's.
Well, you have to be nimble. You have to
Absolutely.
do that, particularly in public television, and particularly for us, where it takes a long time to incubate it. And each is in different stages. Prohibition's done. We're beginning editing both the Dust Bowl and the Roosevelts, and beginning to edit the Central Park Jogger, but still shooting some things, and in early pre-production on Vietnam, and trying to raise money on Vietnam and biographies on Jackie Robinson, etc.
Between the Civil War, the baseball series, and of course the National Park series, you've been through North Carolina.
I have.
What are some of the stories that stand out to you? And either your personal travels or your film making travels. Are there some things that really resonate in your mind about North Carolina?
Well, certainly. I mean, first of all, it's just a phenomenally beautiful state. It's a really important state. I've enjoyed coming here since I began my professional life. And for us in the national parks, it was getting to know Horace Kephart, who was one of the great champions of the parks, and also George Massa, who was a Japanese immigrant who took photographs. And together, Kephart was a fantastic writer and had had a very tragic life, and had sort of escaped. He wanted to escape civilization and went into the Rockies. Went into the Great Smokies and just found his whole life and his calling, and became a writer about the outdoors and camping and the folklore of the people. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story of how they sacrificed just about everything, and Kephart did, to make the Great Smokies a reality. And this is the first major park, huge park, east of the Mississippi, close to, but also threatened by, the major centers of the East. And so it's to save this original forest. It was just a great gift to the nation.
There have been calls, whether they're political or budgetary, for funding cuts to PBS and public broadcasting. To those that are skeptics who say PBS shouldn't continue to exist in the form that it does now, what would you say to convince them that it should continue to exist?
Well, I would not have a job. The Civil War would have not been made. Any of the films I've ever produced would have not come out. It's always very easy in retrospect for the marketplace to say, oh, we would have done that. But I went to the marketplace and nobody was interested in the Civil War. Still pictures for 12 hours, nobody was interested in that. It was only afterwards when it touched the heart. So I stayed loyal to the person that brung me to the dance, PBS, and it would be terrible. We have a great marketplace. It's a wonderful thing, but we do get misguided when we think that the marketplace does everything. The marketplace won't come to your house at 3 a.m. to put out the fire. The marketplace doesn't have boots on the ground in Afghanistan or is flying over Afghanistan. There are some things that don't take place in the marketplace, and public television is one of them. We have to try to be all things to all people, an impossible task, but from cradle to grave, from Sesame Street and other spectacular children's programming to the continuing education that our seniors follow throughout, particularly a network as beautiful as this one in this state. PBS is a vital, vital, important service, and we've got to have it there. And I'm not equating it with the defense of the country by using the comparisons with Afghanistan. I'm just saying that having PBS makes the country worth defending.
All right. Well, Ken, we know you've got a busy schedule. Thanks so much for sitting down with us.
My pleasure. Nice to see you.